Europe stands between two empires again. On one side, Washington is threatening 100% tariffs. On the other, Beijing is tightening control over the rare earths that power Europe's factories, batteries, and digital dreams. This is no longer just a trade dispute. It's a struggle for control over the materials that make modern life possible. When US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned that the world will have to decouple from China, the message was clear. If Beijing wants to weaponize minerals, the West will respond with tariffs, restrictions, and new alliances. But what he didn't say is that Europe, more than anyone, will pay the price. Europe depends on Chinese rare earths to build its electric cars, its wind turbines, and even its defense technology. And yet, it depends on the United States for its security and market access. Caught in this trap, Europe finds itself with influence everywhere and power nowhere. Brussels keeps talking about de-risking, a word meant to sound pragmatic and calm. But let's be honest, it's a euphemism. There is no gentle way to reduce dependence on a country that refines more than 80% of the world's critical minerals. Europe can't mine its way out of this crisis overnight. It would take decades to replace what China already dominates. So the EU buys time, issues communiques, and prays that the US and China don't drag the world into another Cold War. But the truth is that the fracture has already begun. Donald Trump's return to power has changed the tone completely. In Washington, tariffs have become a diplomatic weapon. Trump doesn't hide it. He wants to force China into retreat and bring manufacturing back to the West, whatever the collateral damage. Treasury Secretary Bessent and Trade Representative Greer say China's export restrictions are economic coercion. Perhaps they're right, but Europe sees the irony. Because when Trump demands that Europe join his fight while also threatening tariffs on European goods, the alliance starts to feel like a cage. Europe wants to believe it can stay in the middle ground, trading with China, defending democracy with the US, and calling it balance. But balance requires leverage, and leverage requires independence. That's something Europe has slowly traded away. In energy, it depended on Russia. In defense, on America. In technology, on Asia. Now every global crisis becomes a European test. Will Brussels ever be able to act without waiting for Washington's lead or Beijing's permission? Some hope that the meeting between Trump and Xi at the APEC summit later this month will cool tempers. But even if it does, the larger shift won't stop. Globalization is hardening into regions. Trade is no longer just about efficiency, it's about security. And Europe, for all its ideals, must start thinking like a power again. That means investing in its own mining and refining capacity. It means taking strategic autonomy seriously, not as a slogan, but as survival. Because if Europe cannot control what it needs, it will forever be forced to choose between those who can. Scott Bessent's warning about decoupling was meant as a threat to Beijing. But it's Europe that must now face its own dependence. The question is not whether the world will split. It already has. The question is whether Europe will finally define itself before others do it for her. If you enjoyed this analysis, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and visit westernrelations.com for more deep political and economic insight from a European perspective. Thank you for watching.